Her Wolf for the Holidays by Terry Spear. Chapter 1. What do you mean the property adjoining ours already sold, Lachlan? Grant Macquarie practically roared at the youngest of his triplet brothers, his face reddening as he stood alongside his mate Colleen in the inner bailey of the Farage Castle in the Highlands of Scotland. A smattering of snow fluttered around them. 'Twas only 2 weeks until Christmas, and this wasn't the best of news for the holidays. Lachlan Macquarie knew Grant, chief of the Macquarie clan and their Grey Wolf pack leader, would be furious about it. For centuries, Edhacid James Campbell, known as EJ, and his kin had owned the nearby property, but EJ wouldn't consider selling to the Macquaries before he died because of old Wolf clan grudges. Grant was certain he would finally have the chance to buy it when the ornery old cuss passed on, since he had no offspring to leave it to. Any land that expanded their wolf territory was a good deal. What they didn't want was humans moving in next door to them, though thankfully the Macquaries still had a lot of acreage between them and EJ's property. The manor house and lands were sold to a private buyer, Lachlan said. They better not be planning on building some eyesore on the property. Hell, we live long lives and we'll have to deal with this forever. Furious, Grant folded his arms across his chest. Colleen said, "We know, dear. It's nearly Christmas. Think of pleasant and upbeat things. Like maybe we can befriend the new owners when EJ made it impossible to be friends with him. I can take over some Christmas shortbread cookies or plum pudding. I can even give them a Christmas poinsettia as a housewarming gift. Think positive thoughts." Grant scowled. Colleen sighed and ran her hand over his arm. EJ would never hang Christmas lights on his manor house. Being located way out here and isolated from most everybody, he was more of a recluse and didn't have guests or friends or anyone that we know of. Maybe if the new owners want to decorate the house of the manor for Christmas at his late date, we could offer to help them put lights up or anything else they might want to do. Grant grunted, rubbed his bearded chin, and frowned at Lachlan. "I told you, the moment Campbell died, you were to buy the land." Lachlan had figured Colleen's gentle, kind-hearted words wouldn't have any effect on Grant's irritated mood. "Aye, everyone has been told to watch for any sign he was sick or an announcement of his death. If Campbell had any say in it, he would have sold it to someone who will hate us as much as he did." "I'm sorry, Grant. The minute I heard the news, I was on it. I contacted our solicitor to learn if anyone had inherited the property. As far as we know, he didn't have any living relatives. I had hoped to find out when it was going on the market, but discovered he'd already sold it to a private party a year ago with the provision that he would live there until he died." Grant's brows shot up. "EJ sold the property a year ago?" "Aye, and there was no way we could have learned of it. The whole thing was kept quiet." "What about the deed to the property?" Grant asked. "Whoever bought it recorded it in the name of Campbell. Same initials even, EJ. So we hadn't thought it had changed hands." "How do you know that someone else truly owns it?" "The date on the deed showed it changed hands a year ago." "Maybe we can convince the new owners to sell us the property since they haven't lived there yet." "I'll welcome whoever it is so that they know we're friendly." Colleen had been unable to make friends with EJ, but sounded determined to do so with the new owner. Grant cleared his throat. "We should just scare them away." "Like you tried to scare me away?" Colleen smiled. Lachlan chuckled. Grant cast her a small smile. When Colleen had inherited Farage Castle, Grant had been afraid she'd change everything there when he and his kin had run things for centuries. Colleen had only been amused at Grant's tactics, and they'd ended up mating instead, which had been the best thing that could have ever happened to the pack. Nay, she continued, unless Campbell told the buyers that the people of our castle are difficult to deal with, maybe we can have a fresh start, and sure, if it might work, by all means, make an offer for the property. I know you. If you could, you would buy up all of Scotland. Colleen kissed Grant's cheek. Lachlan loved how she adored Grant as much as he adored her. Then we could run it as wolves anywhere we pleased, Grant said, which was something Lachlan wholeheartedly agreed with. Suddenly, Frederick, their Irish wolfhound handler, came running to join them. Daisy had her puppies! Hercules wants to see them also. The daddy can. Let's go see them. Grant took Colleen's hand, smiling, appearing to have dropped the subject about Campbell and the land. You're feeling all right, aren't you, honey? Just a bit of upset stomach this morning, Colleen said. Good. Then they hurried off to the kennel. But as if he had an afterthought, Grant glanced back at Lachlan. Learn who it is who actually purchased the property as soon as you can. Lachlan had hated to bring his brother the bad news ever since he had learned this morning that the property was in someone else's hands. He tried to learn who the new E.J. Campbell was before he spoke to his brother, but to no avail. Their middle triplet brother, Enric, arrived at the castle, already wearing his Highland great kilt and the ancient tartan, sheathed sword hanging at his belt, and sagin tucked in his boot just like Lachlan's was. Enric lived with his mate Heather at their home near her business, the ye old Highland pie shop, but he still would drive there to help with pack and castle chores. From the expression on Enric's face, his brows raised, waiting to hear if Lachlan had told Grant already. Lachlan suspected his brother already knew what had happened to the land next door. So Campbell bought the place, but he can't be related to old Campbell. He had no living relatives, Enric said. Aye, or so they thought. I have to discover who it is. And then offer to purchase the bordering land? Aye, Lachlan said. Old Grant can try to scare the new owners off, Enric said. Lachlan laughed. Aye, and you know how well that turned out with Colleen. Exactly. Do we know if the new owners are even wolves? Nay, and Grant's afraid that they might try to develop the property into a block of flats filled with humans. He wouldn't put it past the old Campbell to sell it to someone like that to spite us. We have a forest and pasture land between us, not to mention the dike running along the hill to the cliffs and across the pasture land that separates our properties. As long as they don't go hunting on our lands or causing other trouble, I don't see the difficulty. Unless they're not wolves, and they're as cantankerous as old Campbell was. Are you ready for some fighting? Lachlan was ready. They were both looking forward to their sword training, something they did to keep in shape and to hone their skills. They never knew when the training could prove useful. Enric looked around the inner bailey where others were gathering, all dressed in Highland plaids, ready to begin sparring. I am. Where's Grant? With Colleen, checking out the new pups. He'll join us soon. You know how he likes to battle with his men. But especially with us. Lachlan smiled. Aye. The two of them loved to gang up on him because he was their pack leader and their oldest brother, and he had to prove his worth to them and to their men in an endearing way. As Eden Campbell surveyed her land next to the Macquarie's property on that cold, wintry day, she smiled, thanking her lucky stars that E.J. Campbell had come into her life. He had warned Eden she would have trouble with Grant Macquarie and his kin in the castle on the hill, but he told her to stand her ground. She hadn't even known E.J. He'd looked her up owing to the fact that she was listed as a Campbell on Facebook, living in Edinburgh, single, and working out of her home. She did well enough making Celtic clothes to sell at Renaissance fairs and to shops all over the UK and overseas, so she could live anywhere. But EJ made sure to check. He had to be assured she wouldn't lose the property over unpaid taxes or some such thing. Some of Eden's biggest markets were in the United States, and they were always expanding. Plus, she and her twin brother Robert, an associate veterinary surgeon, had received an inheritance from an uncle and their parents, and she'd made a bundle off of her home she'd sold in Edinburgh, so she could afford to pay the taxes and utilities on EJ's property in perpetuity. She was named Eden Jane, same first and middle initials, just like EJ, which he had been really glad for, though he wouldn't say why. But the clincher was that she was a wolf, and so was he, which he'd only learned after talking to her in Edinburgh. Robert was thrilled for her, but he worked in the city and for now with a veterinary practice, so others than helping her move in, he had to get back to the city. Of course, Eden had asked EJ if she hadn't been a wolf. Of course, what would he have done? Track down all of the Campbells in Scotland until he found one who was? He told her. Were she and her brother related to him? Maybe in the distant past his relations were her relations because they were both wolves, but she hadn't known him. He'd given her such a reduced price on the manor house and acreage that she couldn't say no to it. He'd said he would only do it for her because she was a wolf on her own, had an occupation that she could work at anywhere, and would carry on the Campbell name there. She had no luck finding any wolf whom she had been remotely interested in while living in Edinburgh, and with neighbors here to be wary of, Eden figured she had no chance of finding a mate here either. Being so remote out here, she didn't expect to find anyone else who was a wolf, at least for now she was fine with that. Besides, she'd so screwed up things by dating humans in the last 2 years, both married, unbeknownst to her, that she felt relief when she left the city. Not that she wanted anyone to believe that she had left Edinburgh with her tail tucked between her legs, though it did kind of seem like that. She did wonder about the off chance of finding a wolf. Slim chance of that, she thought. Mating him and maybe wanting to change her name to his, then she would no longer be a Campbell who owned the property. EJ hadn't seemed to think of that, and she hadn't wanted to bring it up and nix the deal or promise him something she didn't want to promise. When EJ died, Eden and Robert had taken care of his wicker coffin burial like he had wanted because he believed it was a more environmentally friendly alternative. They had felt saddened at the thought that he died alone like that with no family or friends to care, only them in attendance at his funeral. Though once she had met him, he had sold the property to her. She had made several trips out to see him during the year and bring him food. She'd even offered to help him decorate for Christmas, but he hadn't done so ever, and he wasn't starting now, he said. He did love the Christmas shortbread and other food she brought him. No one should be all alone in the world like that. Though she guessed if he was happiest that way, then that was his life to choose. After Robert helped her yesterday with moving in the bulk of her things, her sewing machine and cabinet and her own new bed, she'd finished moving into her new home this morning, glad to do so before the snowstorm was due in a couple days. She paused to step outside and admire the view. She would never tire of it. The acreage was beautiful, 100 acres in all, pasture land for Highland cattle, a pond, a loch even. Streams meandering through the property, some of the land was situated on a cliff overlooking the ocean. Just picturesque. Even Robert thought the same about the place. If he hadn't been so busy with his practice, he might have considered moving out there with her. She'd fallen in love with the house and land as soon as she visited it. The home was a former inn built in the 1700s, but had been refurbished several times. It was right on the shore of the loch and had views of the mountains off in the distance. with 4 bedrooms, a sitting room, a living room, utility room, 2 bathrooms, and a kitchen. The main part of the house was a nice size for a family. But the manor house also had a separate kitchen, dining, living room, 2 bedrooms, and 2 bathrooms that were perfect for renting out half the house to guests if she wanted to do that. But she would only want to house wolves. Plus, her brother could stay with her anytime he wanted to. All of the windows had been replaced to allow for ample natural light. The house had 2 wood-burning stoves, one of which could burn a variety of liquid fuels. Deep windowsills were perfect for plants or even seating. Rafters above were exposed, and the original board and latch doors inside the home gave it so much charm and made it perfectly unique. Deer, birds, and bunnies could be seen from the 1/4 acre of garden seating, and plenty of outdoor storage could be used for her ongoing garden projects in the spring, summer, and fall. Right now, with winter upon them, she would be running as a wolf, just exploring her property and fantasizing about the wolf pack up the Farage Castle, though from everything EJ had told her, she needed to avoid them. In no way should she ever allow them to talk her into selling to them. She had no intention of it. This would be the perfect place to raise her own family if she ever found a wolf to mate. She glanced up at the hill that was probably grassy in the spring, but in the winter was rocky and bare of trees. And an ancient 6-foot rock wall wound its way across the hill. It extended down the hill and entered the forest below, separating her property from the Macquaries all the way to the main road. EJ had warned her that last year a great battle had been waged below the hill on the other side, film style. He swore they did everything they could to irritate him. She'd seen the American-made film, A Twist in Time, set at the Macquarie's castle, but she'd never envisioned she'd be living next door to the castle where the movie had been filmed. She would have loved to see the battle going on when they were making the film. She wondered if she had sat upon the wall, would she have been able to see the film production from there? Though EJ had warned her the wall was the Macquarie's, so no touching it, or they'd sick their hellhounds after her. She'd heard their dogs were wild giants. They better not mess with her little fox terriers, Jinx and Rogue, both of them in the house checking it out. They were fearless, but she still worried the Macquarie's dogs would hurt hers. Robert had said if she needed his help at any time, he'd be there for her. But her new home was a 3-hour drive from Edinburgh, so she had reassured him she could handle the Macquaries on their own. That's when she saw a humongous dog jumping over the dike, the stone-walled dike, not slowing him down and racing down the hill. Oh my God, she swore he was about to as big as a horse. She turned and shot toward the house, hating to feel as though she couldn't be outside enjoying her property without being chased inside by a ferocious monster of a beast. EJ had been right. She just made it to her back door, her dogs wildly barking at the window, when she threw the door open and ran inside, slamming the door shut and locking it. She was glad she'd already locked the wolf door. She didn't want Jinx and Rogue to be outside unless she was watching them, afraid they might chase after rabbits or something and get lost until they knew their surroundings better. The dog ran into her door with a big-footed thump. It better not have gotten big, dirty paw prints all on the newly painted blue door. She looked out the window and saw the dog staring through the window at her, his tongue hanging out, his ears perking up when he observed her. Bad dog, go home. The dog had a whole castle and lots of his own land to enjoy. Why was he bothering her? She had to admit he was a pretty dog. A brindled Irish wolfhound, she thought, barking like crazy. Her dogs were going nuts, standing on the window seat, jumping at the window, wanting to tear into the intruder. If she hadn't been afraid the giant dog would hurt them, she'd let them out so they could chase him off. Thankfully, EJ had given her Grant McQuarrie's cell phone number in case she had any issues with him. She hadn't believed the moment she practically moved into her new place she would have to call him about some matter. She grabbed her phone and called his number, but the call went to voicemail, naturally, which annoyed her even more. She needed this taken care of now. Then she stiffened her back, threw on her coat, and grabbed a leash, hoping that she could put it on the dog and take him up to the castle without him biting her, though she was good with dogs, so she thought he would be fine. As soon as she unlocked the door and opened it, Rogue and Jinx raced past her into the yard and took off after the dog. "No! Get back here!" Oh no, she hadn't expected them to bust out like that. Back home, they would have never. They had been model, well-mannered pets. Already her neighbor's dog was a bad influence on hers. Seeing the dog in their territory and then running off had been enough of an incentive for them to chase after him. Jinx and Rogue were running as fast as they could after the dog. As he bounded up the hill with his long stride and head start, he was well ahead of them. At least, if he jumped over the dike, the ancient dry stone wall topped with coping stone would prevent her dogs from following him. She raced after them with only one leash, not having had time to grab another, even though she was glad the Irish wolfhound was going home. She didn't want her dogs to bite him. He could very well turn and attack them in self-defense. She could see fur flying and being sued by the laird of the castle because her dogs ganged up on his dog, even though it wasn't her fault. He let his dog loose and he trespassed on her property. She was running up the hill as fast as she could, wishing she was wearing her wolf coat because she could run faster and maybe her dogs would listen to her better than as a human. Suddenly, she stepped in something squishy that didn't feel like the crunching snow and looked down. Dog shit all over her boots. Oh, just great. She could have chased all the dogs down in a heartbeat in her wolf form and maybe would have noticed the dog poop before she managed to get it all over the soles and sides of her wellies. As it was, she was lagging way behind the dogs. The Irish wolfhound leapt over the dike as expected, but to her shock, her dogs scrambled up and over the mossy rocks too. The wall was so ancient that it was covered in a cushion of green moss, a thin layer of white snow on top of it. Well-worn, rounded rocks jutted out from the dike from top to bottom, making them perfect stepping stones for her dogs. And for her too, she hoped. She finally reached the wall where it was a little lower, the wall having settled over the years there, but not by much, and climbed over. If they'd owned the land on both sides of the wall, the stone builders might have even made an opening topped with stone lintel, wide enough for sheep or pigs to go through to the other side of the wall to graze in the pasture there. She landed on the other side in the white dusting of fresh snow, brown boot prints, left behind courtesy the wild Irish wolfhound's leavings, and ran toward the castle. Off to the left was a stream filled with ducks and geese and a couple of swans. Her attention returned to the ducks in the castle surrounded by a massive high stone wall, the portcullis open. In the distance, men were yelling and the clanking of swords could be heard inside the castle walls. She frowned. Was another film being made there? "Jinx, Rogue, come here," she called out, trying to get their attention, but attempting to not clue anyone else in that she was trespassing on the McQuarrie's property. Great, just great. No one would believe the McQuarrie's dog was the culprit in the whole rotten scenario. The Irish wolfhound ran straight through the open gates as if finding safety there. Darned if her dogs didn't run right after him inside the castle walls and vanish. She hoped Grant and his people wouldn't hurt her dogs. She had to reach them in time to explain who was at fault. She finally reached the big gate to the massive castle walls, which were truly spectacular, and saw men sword fighting in the inner bailey, working up a sweat in their kilts and boots, no shirts despite that it was winter. One of the men suddenly saw her dogs and said, Whoa, where'd you come from? They're mine, and your dog taunted them to chase him. As if that didn't sound ludicrous, she thought as soon as she said it. The roguish-looking Highlander stared at her as if she had lost her mind. He glanced around at the inner bailey where every man who had been fighting was now watching her. Their darn dog had vanished, probably hiding in the castle to pretend he didn't have anything to do with any of this, innocent as the day he was born. I'm Lachlan Macquarie. And who do I have the honor of addressing? Lachlan asked. His hazel eyes captured hers, and she swore she saw a hint of amusement in his gaze. Appearing to have done their good deed for the day, Rogue and Jinx finally returned to her side after having lost their quarry. Thankfully, they hadn't found their way inside the castle and had caused even more of a stir. She hooked the leash on Rogue's collar and lifted Jinx in her arms. Eden Campbell, your new next-door neighbor. Kindly keep your wild beast of dog off my property. Then she turned on her heel and took off for the gate. That first meeting with the Macquarie went well, she thought. Not.